On the Advanced Count tab, we'll be examining COUNTIF, that's with one criteria, and COUNTIFs with multiple criteria, and also SUMIF and SUMIFs. Let's begin. You'll notice here in cell B4 that we have the table down here and the date, the column date, transaction date, comma, and then we have a separate criteria. Now in this case, each one of these dates, this is January 1st, 2011, or whatever year's up here, March 1st, February 1st, April 1st, and so on. I've automatically named these cells, and therefore it has January _ 2011, so that's the name of the cell. So in the equation we say, and notice this is in quotes, greater than, equal, that's one string, and it wants to concatenate it with the ampersand. We concatenate two strings together. It will concatenate whatever is in the cell called January 2011, which would be January 1st of that year. So that will be one string on that side. So now we compare the cell to this string. If that's true, we also will compare the cell to less than and concatenated with February. It will check, and if both conditions are true, then it will give us 1 for that cell, and it will count up how many cells meet that. Apparently we have 34 cells that have a date in January, 25 in February, and so forth. Down below, we've added SUMIFs. SUMIFs is going to sum the table of amount over here, and then the criteria is if the transaction date is July and the transaction date is less than August. We see that the sum results is $374. That is what occurred in July. COUNTIFs and SUMIFs give people a lot of power without having to remember and hit Control-Shift-Enter. Notice down here, let's look at some of the values. We have count A of state, table 1 state, and there's 76 that have something in that cell, alphanumeric. How many cells in Utah? Well, COUNTIF, and the criteria is table state, and then we put in quotes UT for Utah. How many cells are greater than 1,000? We use COUNTIF. Again, when we ask how many, we think of count. COUNTIF the table amount, comma, and all in quotes. Again, it has to be a string on the right, greater than 1,000. That's because the COUNTIF formula requires a string. How many cells are over 1,000 and NDC? Using COUNTIFs, we would say table amount, and then would show greater than 1,000. And notice this is COUNTIFs. A second criteria is that table state has to equal DC. Here we put equal DC, but you could put in quotes just DC, and that works fine. We could also use an array. If we were going to do the same thing in an array, we'd put table amount greater than 1,000. This results in a true or false statement. Then we have another true or false statement, table state equals DC. If you try to do math with two Boolean values, Excel will try to turn them into ones and zeros. Two trues will equal 1. A true and a false will equal a 0. Two false will equal a 0. So only if they're both true will this count. It will be a 1, and we will sum it up with the Control-Shift-Enter, thus an array.